Good afternoon. My questions are directed to NYCHA. I represent approximately 4,000 residents of the Palmanock houses, and as you can imagine, they are extremely concerned and anxious. And this is a policy, I'll say right up front, that I oppose and I think is terribly wrong-headed. I wanted to ask you about the medical exemptions, but first, I'm hearing testimony from NYCHA which is 180 degrees inconsistent with documents that I have in front of me. And I'm looking at, in particular, a series of letters that was sent to a Palmanock resident over the last 2 years who is a target of this downsizing. If I'm not mistaken, I think that I heard you testify that you are only focusing on extremely underoccupied apartments and that every resident is given 2 different choices to move if they don't voluntarily move. I'm looking at letters to a Palmanock housing resident from 2011 through 2013. It says, a review of our records indicates that your family has gotten smaller and that your apartment is too large. It is underoccupied. You currently reside in a 4-room apartment when you should be in a 3-room apartment based on NYCHA occupancy standards. I do not see how someone who has 1 more room than what they are allotted to or what they are NYCHA would like to have in a perfect situation would count as being extremely underoccupied. But what I really want to bring to your attention is the testimony that I just heard regarding there being 2 options for each resident. This is a letter sent to a Palmanock resident, December 2013. Dear NYCHA resident, NYCHA previously notified you that you must move to a smaller apartment because your current apartment is too large for your family. A proper-sized apartment is now available. Information about the apartment is listed above. This is a tenant that is being told that they are required to move from Palmanock in Flushing all the way to Long Island City, Astoria, in the Queensbridge houses. You can imagine what a difference that makes in someone's life.
Sure.
The next sentence. In capital letters, you must move to this apartment. Down below, in bold, you must accept this apartment that is being offered. You will not, underlined, you will not receive a second apartment offer. Failure to accept this apartment offer will cause NYCHA to start an administrative proceeding, which includes the opportunity for a hearing that can result in termination of your tenancy. Now, I don't know if you're not familiar with the policy that you're implemented or if it's changed from December until today, but it's clear from what I have in my hand that tenants, that you are not focusing only on extremely underoccupied apartments and that you are not giving tenants 2 options, but rather 1.
So, Councilmember, we'll have to look at the specifics of those cases. The policy that we quoted is NYCHA policy on this subject. If there was an error in those letters going out, we would apologize to that resident and try to correct that situation as quickly as we could.
Let's go on to the medical exemption issue. We heard the HPD testify, as I understood it, that HPD has a reasonable accommodation policy for people who are, because of their age or disability. And NYCHA also has a health care medical exemption policy, but it is the most draconian policy that I have ever seen or heard of in all my years in government, and as a lawyer in private practice representing people who've been discriminated against because of age, sex, disability, etc. The NYCHA policy from the NYCHA Management Manual only allows an exemption if the larger apartment is necessary to store or contain medical equipment that's necessary for a person's health, or if moving would pose a direct threat to the life of a member of the household due to his or her health condition. I have never anywhere seen where the standard for an accommodation is so stringent and so draconian. And if you consider the illnesses and ailments that many elderly people commonly have, high blood pressure, anxiety, asthma, panic attacks, Alzheimer's, what the effect of moving from an apartment would be to someone who has Alzheimer's. None of those, in and of themselves, even as serious as they may be in an individual case, would rise to the level of direct threat to the life of a member. Why does NYCHA have such a stricter policy when it comes to medical and health exemptions than HPD? And will you consider aligning NYCHA's policy, which is to what is the more commonly found and accepted reasonable accommodation standard?
So, Councilman, that policy is under review. I do expect it to be modified as we move forward. We have agreed to modify our reasonable accommodation policies in other areas, and we will take that under advisement and ensure that we get an appropriate policy in that area.
In light of that policy being under review and it being a very significant policy for so many of our seniors or elderly, will NYCHA commit to a moratorium on downsizing until you have reviewed your policy and make sure that it comports what NYCHA itself would recognize to be appropriate policy?
So we'll have to take that under consideration. We have taken some steps to ensure that all of our residents are aware fully of their rights to a reasonable accommodation. What we can do in this case is to communicate very clearly to our property management offices, to our TSAP and lease enforcement organization that we should not be taking enforcement action or inconveniencing residents until we get this policy appropriately in place.
Certainly until you have your policies in order and your communications in order, I think it would be appropriate for NYCHA to hold off on any downsizing actions. But thank you for your testimony. Thank you.